oh, I just saw a property. I'm gonna go and view it. Yeah, I'm really excited, and I want to be excited for them as well. But then, when you ask the question and you say, "Have you spoken to anyone?" and they say no, it's nearly like, right, how do you know you can even afford it? It's it's nearly like going shopping, taking your debit card with you, picking up loads of stuff, and not even knowing how much money is on your card.
Welcome to the Wealth with Love podcast, where we aim to empower, inspire, and encourage couples to build their wealth and their love together. Money and relationships usually gets a bad rap, but we want to change the narrative on this podcast. I'm Tando. This is Lindy. We're from Skilled Finances and the hosts of Wealth with Love. And we're super excited about today's discussion. We have Clarence Kuyoro, aka CK Talks Money, because he's going to break down everything to do with buying a house, getting a mortgage, and all the bits around that. I mean, he literally just makes it super simple and super easy. So we thought we would get him on the show to just give you all of you guys some insights, some inspiration, and some knowledge that you need, some gems in order to getting a house really and buying a house. Welcome to the show, CK. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks for having me as well. Thanks for that lovely introduction as well. That was very church-esque. So yeah, I feel like a guest pastor.
Welcome, brother. We appreciate that. We appreciate that. So, before we kind of jump into like all the bits and pieces about buying a house and stuff like that, just tell the people about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, like you said, my name's Clarence. I am a financial professional and financial consultant. So I do run a page called CK Talks Money, as you mentioned, and the whole reason I actually started that page and the aim behind it was to kind of just educate um, anybody really. There's no typical person I try and target, but anyone who has any interest in understanding things to do with the financial sector in terms of buying a property, and just to kind of simplify the process, as you mentioned, because I have been in the mortgage scene for about, well, since 2015, so that's 7 years now. And a key thing that I find is that people struggle to understand the jargon and the terms that are used. So my aim is just to kind of simplify everything, make sure that people can kind of start the journey without the confusion and just, be able to buy a property when they wish. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on this episode because we're always set there like the times that we've bought like our homes and stuff, we've been there like, what does this mean? Like you get some terminology and you're just like, okay, why couldn't they just put it in plain English for some of us? Like make it easier for us.
Yeah,
So I'm glad that we've got
for
you
sure.
on, and I'm sure after this episode, people will really appreciate the things you've got to say, and it will make the journey easier for them.
Yeah, so buying a house is a goal for many couples, and most people who are going to be listening to this will be thinking, you know what? Yes, I'd love to know, what should I be doing, right? And it's probably going to be the biggest financial decision that many people make, because it's not like you can buy a house for like £10,000, right? Like we're talking huge amounts of money
Exactly.
when it comes to buying a house. So, in your experience and with your expertise, how do you usually advise people, like where to begin, how to even start thinking when it comes to buying a property?
Yeah, no, most definitely. Well, I guess the way I would advise people is subject to their circumstances. So one thing that I'm very big on is people making decisions on their purchase based on where they are, not where they think they should be or where other people are. And the reason I kind
Right.
of make a comment on that is because it's very easy for two couples to sit down at dinner, let's say, and say, "Oh yeah, so we just did this and we just bought here," but their reality might be different to yours. Especially when I've spoken to couples in the past that are buying, it's like they've nearly looked to me to tell them where they should buy. And I'm kind of saying to them, look, this isn't like a buy to let purchase where you're asking me what the yield is. You need to think about where both your families live. If you're both from, let's say you're both from the London area, one's from South, one's from West London, you need to think about when you have kids, what area do you want to be in? You need to think about where you both want to raise your children. Like all these sort of questions, they kind of lead you to where exactly you need to be. So for me, that preparation piece the biggest part is really understanding what it is you want as a collective, and then making a decision based on what you need and what you think are sort of your, sort of deal breakers sort of thing. So that's the first thing that I usually tell people when it comes to buying together, that is anyway.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think what you just touched on just at the end there is about what you want versus what you need, or what you need versus what you want, is actually quite a powerful statement. So it reminded me of like when we first started looking, and we kind of went straight in like, yeah, we want the big house, we want this kind of house, and then you go on Zoopla and then you get very easily and very quickly
Yeah.
deflated because we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's way
Can't
over what we
afford
can
it.
afford. So, have you ever had those discussions with people to kind of say to them, "Listen, I hear what you're saying, but your money is talking differently right now."
Yeah, no, definitely, most definitely. And initially, it used to be a hard conversation to have because, just to kind of give you a bit of background, when I first started as a mortgage advisor, I worked within estate agencies. So I would kind of speak to people who were maybe buying with the agent, or maybe people who were just walking down the street and knew that we had a mortgage broker inside. And it's hard because people are ambitious. Let me use the word ambitious. People come in and they say, "Oh, I just saw a property. I'm gonna go and view it. Yeah, I'm really excited, and I want to be excited for them as well." But then when you ask the question and you say, "Have you spoken to anyone?" and they say no, it's nearly like, right, how do you know you can even afford it? It's nearly like going shopping, taking your debit card with you, picking up loads of stuff and not even knowing how much money is on your card. So one thing that we did always used to encourage was for people to have those sit down conversations with a financial advisor beforehand. This isn't like, oh yeah, bring all your documents, let's do an application. This is literally just the basics. So those who are familiar with the mortgage process would know that the key elements are usually going to be your credit scoring, your income, and your deposit. So if there's two of you, I'll then sit down and say, right, what are your incomes together? And based on the matrix and the criteria that the lenders use, I'll be able to then say, right, this is what you can afford. This ballpark figure, anyway. Of course, there's a lot more that goes into it in the process, but at least it gives you an idea before you kind of jump into a property, get your hopes up. You're even already imagining how you're going to set up the barbecue in the garden, and then
Yeah.
you later on get told that you can't afford it. So it's one of those things, really. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think when we first started looking, we were doing that as well. We're thinking, oh, think about the garden. Like when you have people over, you always want to have a good barbecue, like little things like that before you've spoken to someone. So those are some of the mistakes that we made. And we already, like Tanda said, on Zupa, like, okay, so we want a 5 bed. At the time, it was just the two of us. We weren't really thinking like, why do we want the 5 bed? Can we afford the 5 bed? But because we're seeing other people, like other couples who had probably been married for years and had built up to the 5 years, but we didn't think about that. We were just seeing, well, they've got a 5 bed, we can do it too. But reality hit when you're now looking at those prices and then thinking, actually, maybe I can afford the 5 bed. Let me just leave that for now.
Yeah,
So, what are some of the
exactly.
mistakes that couples make when it comes to getting a mortgage together?
Yeah, most definitely. I guess a lot of the mistakes I feel as if they're not actually physical mistakes that they make in the application, but they're more so preparation mistakes. And the reason I call them preparation mistakes is because it might be something like, right, person A and person B are a couple. They've had these conversations, and let's say, for argument's sake, they are familiar with the criteria and they know that they need to have their incomes and they've calculated their income and everything's all perfect. Now, let's say person A hasn't been entirely transparent with the fact that, oh, maybe he has a CCJ or maybe he has a default. Now, things like this, it's like you can hide it for as long as you like. But when we're applying for the mortgage and it flags up, then it's no longer a secret. So that whole process that you thought you were about to start has either been elongated because you have to go with another lender that's going to have a higher interest rate, or it has to be on pause because now it's right. You need to wait for X, Y, and Z to clear before you can go ahead. And I feel that the transparency is very key. And listen, I am no relationship counselor, I'll say that now, but it's just the importance of being transparent and being honest with the person who you plan to buy with, whether that's your partner or not. Because I've done mortgages for people who are friends. I've done mortgages for brother and sister. So it's not just a relationship thing, but it's just so you know, right, I'm buying with somebody else. And whether you like it or not, the fact that you're willing to go into that financial commitment with them together, you should then also be open to freely being open about your financial situation, because it might be like, right, let me not tell them and hopefully it'll be okay. But when you've gone through a whole process and it comes down to credit checks and now your credit score is the one that's stopping the whole mortgage, then that's gonna be a lot worse off rather than preparing for it prior. So I like to encourage people to be as transparent and honest as possible. You know.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that we advocate as well is exactly that. Be honest, be open, be transparent in your relationship, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's only going to serve you well. And especially if you are making such a huge step together, like buying a house, transparency is literally the best way forward in many cases. Now, as you say, we are talking about two people coming together to buy a house here, right? So there may be situations whereby, let's just say I have uh, some money, Lindy has some money, and we're both coming together to buy a house together, right? But let's just say that my money is, just to pull out random figures, I've got 5,000 and Lindy has 25,000. So, and we're putting that money together as a deposit, but you can clearly see that the money that we're putting in is very unequal. So for couples in that situation, is there anything that they should be thinking about? Are there things that they should be, are there conversations that they should be having because of that big difference in how much they're putting in as a deposit between the two of them?
Most definitely. And that is such a great question, because this is something that me and my friends have spoken about before. And I'm not going to get into how we go about it, because we're going to be here all day. But it is something that's very important to discuss, because the way you're looking at it is that two people and five, and I think you said 5 and 20 or 25. That's quite a big difference. It's not like it's a couple thousand apart. That's quite a big difference. And I feel as if what's important to know when you're buying with that person is that you're both still going to own equally. And this is what I mean when I'm talking about having that conversation, because it's like, it's not just having a conversation about, what color sofa are we going to get when we buy. Is to be able to say, right, cool, you're putting in this much, I'm putting in less than you, but the person that's putting in more needs to understand that, right, we're still going into this 50-50 together. If you look at the land registry documents of the property, you're both 50-50 proprietors, which is ownership of the property, if it's a house, let's say. So it's like, I feel as if those sort of conversations are so key to have. And I feel as if everything that I'm saying thus far, it homes in on communication. I feel as if that is just the key thing that is going to save you a lot of stress, a lot of heartache. I've dealt with situations where people have come to me and said, "Oh, but I put down more on the
Mm.
deposit than he did, and now we're getting divorced. I want him to give me all my money back, or her to give me all my money back." And I'm just like, but it doesn't entirely work like that, because when you
Yeah.
sign on a mortgage declaration, it's literally just person one and person two. You put your signatures down and the lender takes it. The lender doesn't make a note to say that this person put down more. So in the event that anything adverse happens, they get the upper hand. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So it's just to have that understanding of how the money's being used, and to realize that when you're investing together and it's 50-50. So yeah.
No, those are really key conversations to have, aren't they? Because it is common, like it's common that, say, somebody who has been saving for a long time gets into a relationship with somebody else and they start saving up, but they can't get to the same level of amounts that the other person has
Yeah.
saved just because they haven't been saving beforehand, and now they want to buy a property together, or somebody might have an inheritance or whatever the case is, right? So it's very common that couples find themselves in that position of like, okay, we are saving, but we have very, very different situations in terms of how much we're putting in into getting a mortgage together here.
Yeah.
So it's key for them to have those conversations. Now, in terms of saving money in and of itself, for those who are still in that, okay, we are still saving stage, where would you say at this moment right now is the best place for them to consider saving money, for the house deposit?
Yeah, literally. I said to someone recently that if you are a first time buyer and you don't have a lifetime ISA, you are literally robbing yourself, because
Mm.
the lifetime ISA, literally, it's like, and I feel as if the first time I heard about it, I kept on asking myself, why don't more people have this? It's literally, you put in 4,000 in a tax year, and you get 1,000 on top. And for me, it's the biggest no-brainer, and it's the easiest money you're gonna make from this amazing government that we're under. So I would say that I would say that a lifetime ISA is the best and probably the safest way as well. I've known people to put their deposit in like investment accounts with like your AJ Bells and your Hargreave and Lansdowns, and let's say it's in the S&P 500 in an ETF, and it's making interest, which is great. But people need to also realize that they have no control over the price of these investment instruments. So in the event that something does happen and maybe the price of something decreases, that money that you've been saving is also going to decrease. So if we're just coming purely from a savings and a security point of view, I would say I don't think there's anything in the market better than the lifetime ISA. I feel as if that's the best for anybody who's looking to save and to buy a property.
Oh, that's some great advice there. Because I think there's a lot of times when you think, okay, let me start saving for a house, but then you genuinely don't know where to go or where to save the money. So, lifetime ISA,
Yeah,
guys, if you're listening, definitely get yourself a lifetime ISA. And like you said, why wouldn't you take advantage of that extra money that the government's giving you for free? Like, hello,
yeah,
who doesn't like free money? So, it's definitely a great thing
exactly.
to use. Now, to ask you a very I feel like this one's a bit of a controversial question because every time it's asked, I don't think people agree on this one, right? So some people view a house as an asset, whilst others view it as a liability. What would you say when you're asked this question?
Well, I would say an asset, for example, something that you call an asset is something that's useful or valuable. And a lot of the time when we're talking in financial jargon, we use the term asset for something that's going to increase in value. Now, I can see why people call it a liability. I can see why they say that, because, of course, you buy a house, you live in it. Things happen to the house, you're responsible for it, you pay for it. You still have a debt on that property. But if you live in the UK and you've seen the rise of property prices
Mm.
over the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years, I don't see how anybody can call a property a liability. I usually do see properties as an asset, provided that you're buying a property that is in livable condition and that the roof isn't flying off every 3 months. I can call a property an asset. I can see how a property can be a liability. Don't get me wrong, because there are properties where, let's say, if things are constantly going wrong, let's say for argument's sake, you're always having an issue with the wall, or you have a lot of damp or subsidence, and no matter what you do, it's always damaging the property and it's costing you thousands and thousands of pounds a year. Then I can maybe reason with that statement. But when it comes to property, I feel as if where you're buying something that's more times than none going to increase in value, I would call it an asset because it's something of value.
100%. I'm 100% in agreement with you personally on that front. I've always viewed property as an asset, regardless of whether it's a residential property that you're living in or an investment
Yeah.
property that you're going to rent out, etc. Because, as you say, over time it builds wealth for your family,
Yeah.
and over time it's something that you can pass on to your family. So it's just a no-brainer. But I think some people just have this very narrow-minded view of the definition of what an asset is, that they miss out on all these other bits that you've mentioned. Um, Now, one thing I am curious to know from you is that, are there any benefits of buying a house as a couple or as two people? You know, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but are there any benefits that are specific, that, okay, if you're buying a house with somebody else, these are the benefits that you will get, that maybe somebody who's buying a house by themselves might not get or be able to enjoy?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I feel as if for first time buyers, the biggest benefit that I've seen in my time is the ability to buy a property that's bigger and costs more. In our office, we used to call it buying power. And your buying power increases where there's more than one person. For those that don't know, you can actually have about four people on a mortgage application. Two isn't even the maximum. So, for example, let's say, for example, you've seen a big house. Let's say the property is worth 500 grand, and you alone on your income, you could only obtain a mortgage of, let's say, 250. You buying with somebody else gives you the ability to increase that, because for those listening that are thinking, what's this guy talking about? When you're applying for a mortgage and they take both your incomes together, they times it by what we call an income multiple. And then that income multiple gives you your mortgage amount. So as you can imagine, if somebody earns 50K and they times their income by five, the max will be 250. But if there's two people on a mortgage earning 50K and the total income is 100,000, they times it by five, then you can lend 500,000. So that is probably the biggest benefit when it comes to buying a property, the ability to even buy something that's a lot more than what you'd be able to afford on your own. Another thing that I've seen work for people in the past is in regards to the responsibility of the mortgage in itself. So I have seen situations where two people buy together. Let's say, for argument's sake, one of them self-employed, and 1 month they don't earn as much as they usually earn. In that situation, you have another person that's able to maybe fork out maybe an extra £100-200 for that month and pay towards the mortgage as well. You're not sort of left alone, especially if it's a big mortgage and it's expensive. You're not sort of left alone to kind of fend for the mortgage in itself. It kind of gives you the ability to boost you in a way. So that's another way I wish in which people can actually benefit from buying with somebody else. And another way, which I probably shouldn't even share this, but I'm going to anyway. So one thing that I've noticed from lenders when I was a broker was that there were times where if one person has a, let's not very poor, let's say they have a poor credit score and experience, then the other person has an excellent credit score and experience. This isn't me saying that this isn't me saying go into the market and find someone with an excellent score and coerce them into buying a property with you. That's not what I'm saying. But there are situations where having someone on the mortgage that does have a significantly higher credit score than you can take the application over the line, versus if you were doing it by yourself with a average or poor score. So that's another advantage. And I don't even know if I should even call that an advantage, because people might actually only start dating people who have good credit scores, and I'm sure people. I'm sure people with bad credit scores are good people as well. I don't want to doubt that at all, but it's just another way in which there is a slight benefit when it comes to buying a property with two people rather than one.
Do you know what? These are some secrets that we're getting, and I think they're really good to
Yeah.
know, because I think a lot of couples do have the conversation of, like, should we buy together or not? And so you find that, like, for some people, but they may not be aware that, okay, these are the benefits of the two of us going at it to buy this property. Now, on the flip side to that, so let's just say there is a couple out there and they're thinking, okay, one of us will own the property and buy it on their own name solely, and the other person will kind of live in that house, but they want want to be on the title deeds or they won't be on the mortgage at all. Are there any things that are there any benefits to that, or anything that they should be thinking about or should be aware of, that maybe they need to consider before making that decision?
Yeah, I think what you should definitely consider is what the plan is long term, because of course, purely even just from a mental standpoint, if you are living in a property, somebody else is living there. Um, let's be honest, two people living in a house versus one, the bills aren't going to be the same. So if you have two people living and let's say you're using extra amount of electricity, water, whatever it is, that could make a difference to your general budget planner for the month. Now, where you're the only person paying towards the mortgage, you might find yourself in maybe in a deficit or spending a lot more because you don't have the support from that person. So that's something that people should definitely think about, because it's a thing whereby you're literally paying for the living of two people in one property. And financially, if you listen, if you have the financial power to, handle the outgoings and still live your life normally, then that's absolutely fine. But it is something that you'd want to consider. Also, in the event that, let's say, you yourself, I don't know, let's say you are made redundant from a job, or you've had to leave your job, or you've fallen sick or something and you can't make those payments anymore because your income isn't the same, is that person going to be able to support you? Are they going to be able to help and pay towards the mortgage or whatever expenses you have on the property? So these are things that people have to kind of think about when making that decision to just have someone living there and not contributing at all.
I love what you said about it's a long-term thing, because I think sometimes we forget that. We just think, oh yeah, I'm getting a mortgage, I'm getting a house, I'll be in my house, and then you
Yeah.
forget that actually it is a long-term thing until you pay the mortgage off. And sometimes for some that
Yeah.
could take the 35 years or 40 years, but for some it could take less, maybe
Yeah.
10 years. But it's still a long-term thing. It's not a short-term decision that people should just make. So what top tip would you give to couples, like as a takeaway, so that they get approved for their mortgages and they're able to buy their homes?
Yeah. Top tip for couples as a collective.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I would say definitely the biggest tip for me, like we said at the start of this conversation, is just to kind of have open and honest conversations with the person that you plan to, with your other half, that you plan to buy with, because those conversations can save you a lot of stress in the future, you know. And I mean that purely from a ownership standpoint, but also from a mortgage application standpoint, because you want to have clarity on where that person is and what their plans are. And like we've just kind of touched on, this is a long-term decision, whether we like to believe it or not. Is You're not going to pay off your whole mortgage in 2 years, so you need to kind of be sure that you've communicated everything necessary when it comes to actually buying together. Another tip would be to be fully aware of both your financial situations and kind of think, there's one question that they always ask, which I think is quite a good question, even though we can't preempt the future. There's a question that they always ask in some of these credit agreements where they say, do you expect your income or your outgoings to change at all in the next 5 years? And I always think to myself, that is a very good question, because I could be sitting here knowing that I'm applying for a mortgage today and I'm at a high income today, but I plan to have a career change in 3 years. So me having that career change might mean a decrease in my earnings, even if it's by a little bit. And I now have to communicate that with my partner and say, right, how is that going to affect us? Because at that point where I've had the career change, we've already bought the property, and the outgoings in terms of the monthly payments for the mortgage were calculated on my higher income. So if my income was to go down now, how would we sort of manage that? How would we still budget for that, as well as everything else in and around the living in a property? So I think that's something to also consider when you're having these conversations. It's not just talking about where you are now, but it's also talking about the plans that you have for the future, and where it is that you want to be. I'll tell you a very brief story. So I had a friend that said they were going to buy with another friend of theirs, and I said, right, cool, sounds really good. yeah, you guys, or you've been best friends for 15, 20 years. That's great. Now, one of the friends was single, the other one was in a relationship. So in a separate conversation, the single friend told me, "Oh, like I just spoke to this person's partner and he's gonna propose, and I'm really excited for her. Oh, I saw the ring; it was amazing." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, ring, yeah, cool, nice, yeah." But I was thinking, aren't you guys buying a property together? So if you're buying a property together, when they get married, are you like gonna live in the living room, or like what's gonna happen? You know what I mean? Because, and this is why I talk about planning and knowing what the plans are for the future, because it's all well and good, you know, thinking about throwing parties and yeah, saying, "I'll come to our house for the party," but it's like long term, once again, where are we going with that? So that would be the second thing I would say. And the third thing I would say is, even though this kind of even though it will kind of knock me out of the box in some situations, when you're speaking to a financial professional, speak to more than one. Like, I really can't stress that enough, especially when you're speaking to brokers. And I'll say that for mortgage brokering, if you're trying to finance a car, if you're trying to get car insurance, always speak to more than one, because what you will find is that different brokers will give you different levels of advice, and based on their experience and their knowledge of the market, that will determine how good or how progressive the advice they give you is. And there's things that you might pick up even if you don't use certain brokers. You might pick up things that will have you thinking, and sort of open up your mind to another way of doing things, rather than if you just spoke to the one. And of course, when it comes to mortgages, not all brokers have access to what we call the whole of the market. So we have some brokers that might actually have only access to about 12 lenders, then some have access to over 100. So you really want to make sure that you're speaking to, I say speaking to very strongly, because I'm not saying do decision in principles with every lender on the market. I'm just saying, if you're going to have those conversations with different mortgage professionals, just to ensure that you're making a decision that is right and fit for the two of you, and that you're not sort of like rushing into it.
Yeah, no, those are some good tips. Those are some very, very good tips. And I like the fact that, you're pushing this honest and transparent narrative, because it's something that's very close to our hearts. And I think this goes beyond just buying a house. I think anything to do with
Yeah.
managing money together, budgeting together, etc. Honesty and transparency is literally the foundation of that. And anything else like buying a house should just be an extension of that sort of situation. And also just, the tips around uh, getting, I guess, different speaking to different people to get the different advices, so you can make a decision that's best for you at the end of the day, because everyone that you speak to might tell you something differently, or offer you something different that the other person didn't offer you. So it's always good to ensure that you're getting the best for what you're looking for. So those are some really
And
good
guys,
tips
do you
there.
mind if I just throw one more thing in there?
Mm,
The
Yeah.
mm.
reason that I said what I said about speaking to different people by yourselves is because I see so many situations where I speak to someone and I said, "Oh, like, so who did you speak to for your mortgage?" And they'll say, "Oh, yeah, it's just some guy. Like, my father-in-law said that he knows a broker and he's been using him for years." That statement, "He's been using him for years." I hear that so much, and it's like, this is not to say that those brokers aren't, knowledgeable, but one thing that's very key when you're buying a mortgage, I feel as if people underestimate the personal side to this. And you need to really see a mortgage professional that has a genuine interest in ensuring that you make the right decision, not just someone who's trying to package your case, send it off to the lender, and get paid some commission for putting the case through. So you need to
Mm.
make sure that the decision ideally that you make, let it be one where you and your partner together, you don't have to be people who are savvy and very good with finances. You can even be two people who know nothing about it, but because you've gone hand in hand to speak to professionals together, you spend that time building your knowledge together. Then also any decisions that you make, automatically they'll be in sync, because you're then able to say, right, so we've seen broker A, B, and C. Let's see what we think of them and the options that they've given us, and then we can take it from there. and kind of in a way eliminate all these external or third party voices that might be trying to tell you who you should or shouldn't go and speak to.
Yeah, 100%. And very, very clear on that front. So hopefully for those who are listening, you've had some real good gems on the process of buying the house, or at least the things that you consider, particularly if you're buying with your partner or thinking about buying with your partner, and the kind of conversations that you need to have. Now, before we bring this to a close, we've got some quick fire questions to go through for you, CK. So we're going to kind of go through them and see what what your thoughts are on each of them. So the first question is first date. Now, as most people know, first date is when you're kind of seeing if there's any potential with the person that you're thinking about, potentially getting into a relationship with. Now, at Wealth with Love, when we say first date, what we want to know is, when was your first time that you actually thought to yourself, you know what, I need to get serious about my money?
Wow, that's a great question, boy. Okay, so financially, and if you watch my videos and the ones that are to come, you'll know that my relationship with money, despite being in the financial industry for 10, 11 years, was shocking from a young age. And I use the same excuse every time. I say I earned way too much money, way too young, and I didn't have the right direction. I would have probably been about 24, maybe 25, should I say about 3, 4 years ago. So let's call it 2019, when I started to really genuinely take it seriously. And my reason was that's the first time that I stepped into the world of contracting. And when I realized how much I'll be earning, I had a friend of mine pull me to the side and say, my bro, you see that stuff that you do, that you usually do, you need to relax, because you were doing that on that salary. So now that you're earning this one, he said to me, G, please, you need to just allow it, control what you need to do. And that's when I started realizing how wasteful that I'd been, and how much I wasted money on things and people and stuff like that. So, and of course, that contributed to the birth of the CK Talks Money that we see today. So yeah, that's when I'll say it was.
Love that, and I love friendships like that, where
Yeah.
people are like pushing you to be
Yeah.
better and to be stronger, particularly in the era of finances, and people who aren't afraid to like challenge you to say, listen, this where
Oh
you're
yeah,
going is not it. Try this
it's
instead,
not the
kind of
one.
thing. So, infatuation, for those who don't know, is basically where somebody has very strong feelings of attraction for somebody else, and they confuse it for long-term love, but it's really a short-term emotion burst that just quickly fades away. Now, in Wealth with Love, when we say infatuation, what we want to know is, have you ever made any financial decisions that at the time you thought were like really good decisions, only for you to look back and think, yo, that was such a terrible decision?
Most definitely. Loads of times. I remember. Oh, this is. I can't even. I'm telling you this. I remember going to Dubai in 2019, and kid you not, I'm actually going to send this episode to my friend Ola to listen to, because he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We were on the phone every week for about a month saying, yep, bro, this is our budget. We're not going to spend over this. This is how much money I'm going to put on my Monzo card to go to Dubai. And I'm going to watch my money, and I'm going to make sure that I don't go over this. And this is my first time in that. I like to call it a fake city, because everything just looks too good. And that's the one time I can say that the infatuation for spending, and notice that I'm not mentioning any particular thing, because there was no particular thing I spent on. It was just the whole lifestyle of everything. And I remember coming back, and I don't know if you guys bank with Monzo, where if you go abroad and you come back, it says, welcome back to the UK. When you were in the UAE, you spent X amount. And when I saw the number that came up, it's only God that I had to look at, because I was thinking, this is mad. Like, I said, fake. And honestly, those times I was contracted as well. And I actually planned that when I came back, I was going to take a bit more time away from work and just relax at home. That following Monday, I went straight back to the office, because I said, I need to get my money back. that money that I spent in that country, I need to get my money back. So yeah, that's what I would say. I definitely got caught in the lifestyle. I was definitely drowning in the sauce, as they say. But yeah, that's probably my experience.
I feel like we all do that one thing where we look back and we're like, yeah, what was I
Oh
doing?
yeah.
But you know what? Yeah, life. So the third question is it's basically based around cuffing season. So this is generally where people seek a short-term relationship during the cold months. So you're looking at like autumn, winter, and it usually ends after winter. So at Wealth with Love, when we say cuffing season, we would like to know what sacrifices have you made in the short term to reach your desired financial goals?
Yeah, no, most definitely. And for me, they were quite easy to identify. It was stuff like just little things like not going out too much, deleting the Uber Eats app, because during that sort of lockdown period, that Uber Eats app, it made my account decrease, but it made my stomach grow. So it's not just the money that I was saving, I was also saving my life when I deleted that thing. So I said, and the thing that was the first time I'd ever used Uber Eats. I was thinking, so this is what people are enjoying. You literally just go on your phone, you click on wherever, the doorbell will now ring in about 30 minutes. You'll just go downstairs, you'll place it, you'll play your FIFA, you'll just relax. So for me, it was making those sacrifices and doing things like reverting back to cooking and eating home cooked food rather than ordering whenever you feel like it. And a lot of this for me comes down to habits. It comes down to building positive and progressive habits that are going to actually help you get closer towards your goal. And listen, it's not everything that you can go cold turkey on and stop immediately. But especially for those who have read the Atomic Habits book, you will know that a main key thing around the book is ensuring that you're making small changes every day, because those small changes then amount to bigger changes. And if you even think about bad habits in itself, whatever it is, remember that those bad habits, there was once upon a time where that bad thing, it was the first time that you did it, and that first time turned into a reoccurring and a compounding activity that has now turned into your bad habit. So for me, it was things like that. It was just cutting out the unnecessary spending, unnecessary going out. Like my mum and dad used to say when I was younger, it's not every party you have to go to. So sometimes you just stay in the house, you just watch Netflix, and you just chill out. So yeah.
This whole conversation has been super packed with so many insights and so many things that people should consider and think about. So, CK, if people want to connect with you and can kind of connect with you, where can they go and how can they find you?
Yeah, so the main platform is Instagram. It's CK Talks Money, so at CK Talks Money on Instagram. There's loads of content on there for you to, scroll and waste your day on. So enjoy that when it's there. I do have Twitter. It's not very active, so Instagram is probably the best place. And on my Instagram, you can click into my bio and contact me via email with any questions you might have. Or even I was trying to keep my explanations quite brief today. So if there's anything that I've said and I didn't kind of delve into it, feel free to get in touch and I'll be more than happy to explain it further.
100%, 100%. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on this podcast, and we have been super
Thanks so much.
grateful to have you on, and it's been fun. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I really love what you guys are doing as well. And those questions
Thank
as
you
well. I
very
love
much.
how you labeled them according to the process of love. So that's actually really cool.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.